right here on the brand new YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone for joining us, tuning in. We appreciate all your support. Hey, we've got someone awesome here today. I mean, it's Brent Nally. I mean, everyone knows him from his great YouTube channel. Hey, Brent Nally, thank you so much for joining me here at Dead Nation, rallying at the brand new YouTube channel. You're you call yourself a conservative transhumanist, but you're really a veteran. You're a veteran. You're a battle tested and battle hardened veteran. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Really excited to be here.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much for joining me here. And let's just first start off at the beginning. I mean, what is the beginning for you? Where did you get into this stuff? I mean, where did the light bulb go on?
Well, yeah, everybody has a story and everyone's is unique, and mine is no different. So it was probably about when I was 20 years old in college. I was a fraternity guy, went to a lot of parties, really social, had a lot of fun. I was at University of Kentucky. This was around 2005, 6 or so, and probably drinking a little bit too much, having a little bit too much fun. I always got really good grades and I was focused on that, but on the weekends, I like to have fun. And so basically, I started having some stomach issues. And I already was thinking that probably the Western medicine establishment wasn't going to help me. And I kind of already thought maybe it was just my not so great college diet and maybe drinking too much beer and liquor. So, long story short, I was just basically having some chronic diarrhea, and it's embarrassing, especially at that age and not knowing what's going on. Um, but I saw a naturopath, and the naturopath was able to help me, whereas the medical, Western medicine medical doctor was not able to. They basically said, "You're fine, nothing's wrong," and I'm like, "Well, there's definitely something wrong because I'm not supposed to have chronic diarrhea every day." So the naturopathic doctor was able to help me with some natural herbs and some remedies. And that just really opened up my eyes to natural medicine, thinking a little bit differently in general. Then I started reading books on transhumanism, like The Singularity is Near from Ray Kurzweil. I've since read all of his books. I've interviewed him a couple of times. Then I got into being a mortgage broker when I first graduated college for a year. And that was in '07, '08 when the whole economy was imploding because of mortgages in the US. So I had a front row seat for that. The first job I was at was called First Commonwealth Mortgage, my first job out of college. And there were about 250 loan officers when I first started. And 10 months later, in June of 2008, when I finally decided to quit, I was one of 25 loan officers. So I saw a company just implode my first job out of college. So that was really encouraging. Welcome to the real world. So that got me interested in just figuring out, like, since I was very young, I always wanted to know how things really work. I didn't just say, okay, when most people tell you it just is what it is, kid, get on with life. And thankfully, I'm 34 years old, so I'm a kid who kind of grew up on the internet, and now I'm a young man, and I was able to figure out a few things, and I'm really excited to be here with you, Steele, and hopefully we can figure out a few things together.
Yeah, I'm always interested to figure out some new things and learn things. That's my passion, is learning new things, and learning about people. It's something that's evolved on me. Uh, because I think mainly because a lot of the people that you learn about were the people you were told to learn about, and so I was disinterested in a lot of that. So you watch TV and they said you have to learn about these celebrities or these politicians or these established icons, and I was never really into that. I was trying to always learn about these people I read in books, especially sci-fi authors or great scientists or some other people who my teachers would encourage me to learn about, and I was like, oh, that's fantastic, that's great, but so I can't sort of but now, thanks to the power of the internet and this show, and I can actually learn about real heroes in the real world, and that for me, that is so much more encouraging, so much more empowering, and I've it's so much more fun. So yeah, I'm always up to learn new things and learn about people. It's something I'm learning to do, is learn about people, because these people are way more empowering and encouraging than some random established icons in the media or that we're told to learn about. So That's fantastic. Hey, thanks, Mike DeVerde, for joining us in the chat. He's a real champion of a fan. And thank you very much. Can you share this link around, Mike? You're a champion. Thank you very much. Well, look, listen, that mortgage thing. I mean, the 2007, 2008 financial crisis. The subprime mortgage blow up. Is that what encouraged you to get into crypto? I mean, that puts a lot of people didn't understand. I can show you my documents. I can tell you about the amount of times I annoyed my parents and my university friends about crypto in 2009, 2010, because I just started learning about all that sort of stuff, and really came into the fore because I was following Max Kaiser in 2011 when he had it on his show. But he was talking about it a lot in the preamble, and Max Kaiser is one of my heroes. So, but like from America, from Max Kaiser's perspective, he was talking about bloodbaths. He was talking about all these big companies going belly up. And I was trying to explain it because we never went through a recession here in Australia. We didn't have mass job losses. We actually went okay. And I was saying to people, no, I don't think it's like this. It sounds like a big mess. Like in the American economy, sounds like a huge mess. And I think that crypto is going to be something really important. And people said, I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking a bunch of lunacy. When I look around the world, I see, which is Australia, I see everything functioning as per normal. Is this what kickstarted your ideas in crypto, your notions that that the financial markets weren't all they were made up to be, and that there had to be more transparency?
Certainly so. I definitely wouldn't have found Bitcoin in the manner that I did if I didn't have that experience in the mortgage industry, and specifically in 2007 and 2008. So just to give a little bit more background, I was planning on being an attorney since I was very young. My father is an attorney, and two of my uncles on each side of the family, my mom and dad's side, are attorneys. I was pre-law. I took the LSAT. I even did an internship with the DA's office my senior year of college. And one of those things where we just don't talk about money enough. I had scholarships throughout college, so I never had to pay for college. I was very fortunate there. I got out of college with no student loan debt. So Sallie Mae is the student loan government entity here in the U.S. So Sallie Mae never got a hold of me. And so I was fortunate there. But senior year of college, I was talking to my mom nonchalantly and just saying, yeah, when I go to law school, are you guys prepared to pay for this? My mom looked at me. I'll never forget that look. She was like, we're not paying for your law school. What are you talking about? So I said, you know what? I don't want to go into debt, because I talked to a few of the younger attorneys at the DA's office who were in their mid-20s, maybe been working for a year or two, and they were in maybe $80,000 to $100,000 worth of debt just from law school. And that's in 2007 money. So, and they were only making maybe like $60,000 in Kentucky. So I said, you know what, let's try going and making some money. So there were a few guys from my fraternity who were a couple years older than me, who were already managers at a loan officer, at a loan company, that actually people from the private Catholic high school I went to in Louisville, Kentucky, founded. They founded the company a few years earlier in the early 2000s after spending 10 years on Wall Street. So you can see I was kind of tracked in a way. I had these connections that aligned me to this. Hey, come in and we'll train you up. Other guys are doing it. They're making $130,000 in Louisville, Kentucky in 2005-06. That was a lot of money back then. You could buy a nice 3-4 bed, 2-bath house at that time for $130,000. So I knew guys who were paying off homes when they were 23 years old. It's not really typical. So it was enticing to me. I just happened to enter it at the wrong time from making money. However, as I've gotten older, I've realized that experience was very valuable, and now I wouldn't trade it for anything, because while I didn't make a whole lot of money, I had some good months. I learned how to sell, and I learned how money works, because I never stopped asking questions. Most people were just trying to make money, whereas I was trying to figure out, why is this all happening? Why are guys who've been in this industry for 20 years not know what's going on? Why are regulations changing every single week and literally almost every day? Regulations that hadn't changed for years. So that was my experience.
Yeah. You came in at the end of the pyramid scheme. You came in right when all the losers were getting in at the end, and it was all going to be dumped at the end. And that's not your. I'm not calling you a loser. I'm just saying it as a generic bid. They've run out of houses. The George Bush home scheme and all that. It's all over now. There's no interest rates to drop anymore,
Right.
and do you feel a depressing thought? Do you feel that we're in the same position now? I mean, you mentioned you kick Sally Mae out of the house, but what about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? I mean, is this going to happen again? Are we in this cycle again? Do you feel that way? Is it a housing crisis again? What do you reckon?
I certainly believe that we are. However, timing this is very difficult. So, to get back to Max Kaiser, I started following him probably around maybe the same time you did. Sounds like around 2008, 2009. I remember in 2011, Max Kaiser talking about Bitcoin, and I didn't
Crazy
listen
stuff,
to him
right?
then. Right? It was crazy. It was like $1 back then, and it's frustrating because I was listening to him rather intently, watching him on YouTube, and I looked into Bitcoin. Coinbase wasn't founded until 2013. It was not easy to purchase it, and I am a tech guy. I am here in Silicon Valley, where I've worked for the last 11 years in different startup roles and understanding technology. But for me, Bitcoin in 2011 was a Google search, a little bit more, and then I was on to the next thing. So unfortunately, I did not buy it back then. But I was savvy enough at that point in time to know that this whole global economy and the way that we create money through central banks was, in my opinion, just a scam. I mean, and I still think that it is. I think that the Federal Reserve System is the largest Ponzi slash pyramid scheme. It's kind of a little bit of both that this humanity has ever seen. And I think that it may get unraveled at some point in time. I think it's almost inevitable. But don't underestimate the powers that shouldn't be and their ability to just keep kicking the can down the road and coming up with new schemes and fooling the people over and over again, because that's what they do. So all I can do is try and be honest, come on shows like this, tell it as I see it, try and tell the truth as I see it. And if we're going to change the world, it's clearly going to have to come from a grassroots, decentralized movement like what we're doing on YouTube and things like that.
Yeah, and yeah, I thanks. Like the main reason I started watching Matt Kaiser is because I wanted some real news, and I was like, hey, this guy's the only guy with some real news. But anyway, like, yeah, totally agree with you. And the only thing you ever need to know if you're watching is that the Bank of International Settlements is the central bank of central banks, and they have shareholders. I mean, if you don't understand it from there, yeah, I mean, you don't get it. But anyway, let's moving on. Different systems. Let's talk about how did you met Jacques Fresco? I mean, tell me about this. I mean, this is the Zeitgeist project. This is that very famous documentary that popularized his work. I mean, you went to Florida, I guess. He was in Florida in the jungle somewhere, right? I mean, tell us the story.
Yeah, it's a great story. I'll try and keep it short. A little bit of preface before jumping into Jacques. So I had saw Zeitgeist, like many people had. That was pretty much the first documentary to go viral on YouTube around, I'm going off memory, 2007 or so. I've been watching YouTube since pretty much it came out, by the way, in like 2005 or so. So I know the evolution of it's crazy. And so Peter Joseph created this great documentary called Zeitgeist. I don't agree with every single thing in there, but I thought that it was pretty groundbreaking. And then Zeitgeist moving forward incorporated Jacques Fresco, and I believe that was in 2008. And I was heavily involved in the community. I was young and I didn't have much money and the world was falling apart. I just wanted the world to get better as I saw it. And I didn't necessarily believe that a resource-based economy was going to actually happen. You know, there were lots of people in the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement who were a little bit delusional, in my opinion. They thought that we could actually change the world that quick. But I aligned with the general message of, hey, let's try and make the world a better place. Let's try and help with strategic access to resources, which now you're seeing a lot of tech companies really build this out over the last decade. Things that Peter Joseph and the Zeitgeist movement were talking about and things that Jacques Fresco had been talking about for decades. You see those in things like Uber, Airbnb, I won't go on and on, but it's strategic access to resources, even, Bird with the little scooter carts, right? And so I just was excited about what they were talking about. I took my now wife, girlfriend at the time, to the global premiere of Zeitgeist Moving Forward in January of 2011 in LA. So I got to meet Peter Joseph there and the rest of the big Zeitgeisters. Jacques Fresco, unfortunately, could not make it there because I believe he was 96 years old at the time and he wasn't traveling a whole lot. So I connected with a lot of the folks there. And then the next month, in February of 2011, I decided to go to Miami to visit my cousin who was living there at the time. And then we made the 2.5-hour drive to Venus, Florida, which, as you so eloquently stated, is pretty much in the middle of the jungle. It's in the middle of nowhere. And I did the full day tour with Jock and his partner, Roxanne Meadows. And we were there for probably about 8 or 9 hours. And I got a lot of film footage on my, old school iPhone 4, horrible camera, no gimbal, just trying to get as much footage as I could, but also enjoy the moment and suck up my time with him. And it's on my YouTube channel if anybody wants to watch it. But I had a great experience, and I'll share anything more that you wanted to know if you have any questions about that.
Yeah, no, that's really fun, and I'm busy chunking my way through it. There's a lot of footage there, and it sounds like the man has a lot of wisdom. Now, I agree with you. I mean, I don't agree with everything that's going on there, and I'm not fanciful and utopian like that. I don't even think that sometimes that works. But what is good is it's a whole new way of integrating science and technology and reason and logic into a new system, a different paradigm shift from what we have. And you can extract what you want from that to make the world a better place. And I think, Jacques probably said, this probably isn't the end point. I mean, nobody's God, right? He doesn't believe in God. I think he's an atheist or whatever. But nobody's God, and all we can do is promote new ideas. You mentioned Peter Joseph. I mean, Peter Joseph is a commodities trader or a day trader or something, isn't he? He's not someone stupid who doesn't understand financial markets and how capitalism works. I mean, this guy makes a lot of money off it, and points and laughs at people who pretend to know about it and aren't actually using it to their advantage. So, and he uses that as a mechanism to fund new ideas, enterprises, and things as well. So for me, I don't know. Yeah, I guess maybe it's the same idea, but I don't totally agree with everything either. But it's new ideas, it's innovative, it's exciting, and you can it really stirs the imagination and enhances your imaginative capacity, and that's what I find exciting about it. It's not just necessarily that that we're going to implement this and all of the the mother AI that's running the whole thing was going to save the world. I mean, that's not what it's about, right?
Definitely. I agree with pretty much everything you stated there. And I'll just add a couple more things there. Yeah, I believe Peter Joseph was a commodities trader. He was also in marketing in New York. I don't know how much trading he does these days. I don't really keep up with him too much anymore. But I just think he's an incredible person. And I think they had a unique message to state, both Peter Joseph and Jacques Fresco. And, I think that they were both trying to make the world a better place in their own way. And we don't all have to agree, but it comes to what we'll probably talk about here in a bit, which is just the voluntarism, the voluntary principle. As long as people are doing what they want to do in a nonviolent way and not hurting other people in a free market system, then let them do their thing. Let the market play it out. We'll see in the end who is right and wrong. And we should be encouraging people to think differently. And I think that's the common theme that you and I have stated about the Venus Project, the Zeitgeist movement, Jacques and Peter.
Yeah, talking about voluntarism, you went to another interesting thing. All of these things I can't access because I'm way down here in Australia, and each time I'd try to access it, cost me thousands of dollars. It's about Burning Man. That's a voluntary effort. What is it like there at Burning Man? Is it a communist utopia or what?
It's actually not communist. What it is it's a sharing economy. So this actually ties in somewhat to the Venus Project's resource-based economy, but played out in real life for about 1 week in time every single year towards the end of August, early September, in the middle of nowhere in a place called Black Rock Desert in Nevada. And so I had heard about it for years. I remember, like I said, I grew up on the internet in Kentucky growing up. I always had a little bit of California on my mind growing up, watching movies and music and things like that. And I heard about Burning Man probably in the late 90s. And then I researched it quite a bit when I was in college, just Wikipedia, Google, any videos I could find. And so I got to go for a couple years, and I could have gone more, but it's a full week if you want to experience it, and to take time off is sometimes a commitment. And it is in the middle of the desert, so there is a survival aspect to Burning Man that a lot of people don't fully appreciate until sometimes they show up there. And you have 40-mile-an-hour winds in the middle of the desert with playa dust blowing in your face. You better bring some goggles, some masks. I mean, you better have a tent. You better know how to camp. You better have some survival skills, or you better learn them really fast. So it is awesome. It is a unique experience in many ways. But what it really is it's a sharing economy. So you're not allowed to transact with any money there, for only two exceptions. Burning Man does sell coffee and ice. That's it. They don't even sell water. Unless things have changed in the last few years, which I don't think that they have. I haven't gone in the last 4 years, I don't think. I got married 1 year, and then honeymoon, and then other things have just come up. I'll definitely be going again at some point, but it's an incredible experience. The art, the culture, the people. I think it's about 70 to 80,000 people now is how many people have been going in the last few years. It is, to my knowledge, the third largest city in Nevada after Las Vegas, Reno, and then Black Rock City for that 1 week there. So it's absolutely incredible, and it shows that if you are down on the human species, if you're depressed, if you're in a bad state, go to Burning Man. I'm dead serious. Go to Burning Man, and you will be revived of what this human species can accomplish. The art, the culture, the commitment, just the love. I've never seen one person get in a fight. There are no bad vibes there. It's incredible people that you meet there, beautiful people. There's people doing certain drugs if they want to do them. There's certain people of all sorts of backgrounds. You also have your Silicon Valley tech billionaires that go there as well too. The Elon Musk, the Google founder, Sergey Brin. A guy we should talk about here soon, Ray Dalio, the founder of the largest hedge fund on the planet, Bridgewater. He just went for the first time to this Burning Man last month, and I think he enjoyed it. So, yeah, and I have a few videos on my YouTube channel from a few years ago about Burning Man. So,
all right, well, yeah, if you want to talk about Bridgewater, let's talk about that. I mean, hedge funds are fun. Yeah. So what happened with Rodalio? He's in control of a $150 billion hedge fund. What's he doing at Burning Man? Wouldn't he get stabbed? No, I'm kidding. But what's he doing at Burning Man?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think that from what I've got to know of Ray, from following him primarily on LinkedIn, but also on Instagram, I've read his book Principles, which I highly recommend, and I've watched just many of his interviews on YouTube. I don't agree with everything that he says, but that's kind of straight advice from him. Listen to everybody, and take your own conclusions from each person, from what they're saying, filtered through your knowledge and your experience. He's built an incredible company from nothing, and he didn't come from a wealthy family or a strong finance background. He had his struggles in school growing up, and I've seen this as a common trend with very successful people. This morning I was just reading Charles Schwab, the actual founder of Schwab, the investment firm. They just announced that they got rid of all commissions for trades. the $4.95, gone. So they just announced that this morning. It will be out October 7th here. We're recording on October 1st right now, 2019. And that shot Schwab's stock price down 8% this morning because, the stock market doesn't like any huge surprises like that. But it shot their competitors, TD Ameritrade, down about 20% this morning, which was their, biggest dip in one day of trading since 2006. So I know I'm kind of going off here, but Schwab is dyslexic. Charles Schwab is dyslexic. And what I started learning is that there are many, many successful billionaire financial people who actually grew up dyslexic, thinking that they had learning disabilities and were dumb. And in certain ways they are. But what Ray Dalio has taught me, something that he's said many times, is that sometimes your greatest strength on one side can also be your greatest weakness on the other side of that coin, and vice versa. So it seems to me that the dyslexia, that these incredible entrepreneurs and business people who have become billionaires seem to have in common, also on the other side of that, just had this incredible ability to focus on the long term. And that is a huge message that I have on my channel and with your viewers, that play long-term games with long-term people. Think long-term. In a world where attention spans are shrinking more and more and more. What is this interview, an hour long? Who's got an hour long? Take an hour to listen to big ideas. People have 5-second attention spans now and they're shrinking, I'd say focus on long-term.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, that's the same, that's what we have in common. For example, we'll probably work out for a while now, and that'll be good because long-term thinking is what you need in this world. Yes, I agree. And attention spans has been shortening. They've gone from about 6 minutes on average to about less than 30 seconds, and we're getting down to 5 or 6 seconds, like you said, especially with Facebook scrolling speeds and stuff like that. It's the attention economy. So but talking about the characteristics of these billionaires and their thought patterns, I mean, most of them are probably on the spectrum somewhere. They don't really care about social norms and social characteristics and social commentary and social drama, which paralyzes the vast majority of people. And they focus on these ideas, and they focus on systems, and they focus on I think high value activities, which means that they know how to delegate work properly and appreciate other people properly, as opposed to treating people like if you're one of these 1800 factory workers. I mean, you don't see these guys rising to the top very much anymore. You see the Elon Musk, the engineers. I mean, Elon Musk is an engineer. I mean, Bill Gates is a software programmer. I mean, these people have a skill at something that they can enhance within their company, and they know how to delegate work. They do SWOT analyses. They know their strengths and their weaknesses, and they invest trust in other people to pick up where they fail. They listen to advice. They ask people for their opinion, and when someone says, "Hey, I don't like that. I think that's stupid. I think what you should do is do this," they go, instead of getting offended, they go, "Hey, that's great advice. What's someone else think?" And then they analyze the two different opinions, and they compare that against their own opinion and see what it's better. They listen to their customers. They listen to a whole swab of inputs and data metrics in order to always improve their service and improve their focus and improve themselves. And beat on their craft. They beat on their craft. They practice their craft until they know it back to front, and until their toes bleed, and then they do it again, and they do it again, and they do it again. Metaphorically, sometimes realistically. I've had a lady who was a ballerina, and she just literally her toes bleed. So these people are incredible, and they're rewarded financially, but it's not because they're rewarded financially. It's because they're rewarded because they can navigate the extremely complex jungle environment that is, entrepreneurship, and that is business, the business landscape, and that is the life landscape, and balance all the social versus the creative versus all the other things that go on. And that's how you do it. But it takes a very special mind to do that. There's plenty of people who've won the lotto and they've gone straight back down to poverty because they don't know how to creatively use that money. They don't recognize that money as a tool. And there's plenty of other people, who won the lotto and they buy a house and they invest the rest because they think that's great, and they live a
Uh-oh, Steele, can you hear me?
have a comfy pension. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello? I can hear you.
Steele, if you can hear me, you're frozen on my end.
Oh, okay. I can hear you. I can hear you. So, well, we're still live. So, well, anyway, I'll keep talking because we're still live. So, I can hear you. I can hear. So yeah. Anyway, so that's the interesting thing. So we'll try and fix this up. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we're just trying to fix up the feed because he's still here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll just try and fix up this feed, see what's happening. We're talking about entrepreneurship and leaders and billionaires and the characteristics of those leaders. It's an interesting topic. There's these leaders and these billionaires and these incredibly important people. I mean, they don't just come out of the void. I mean, it's not very often that you talk to a billionaire and you're like, oh, how did you get your start? And they say, well, I won the lottery. I mean, this doesn't happen very often. I mean, what normally happens is that these people have a great work ethic, that they have an incredible mind, where they can think about big ideas, where they can supercharge big ideas and convert those ideas to some sort of mass, some sort of forward moving entrepreneurial genius, where they coalesce people and make those people produce something beautiful. Okay, looks like we're going to get him back now, Mr. Brent Nally. Let's call him because we're still live. We're still streaming.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mr. Brent Nally, are you there?
I am here now. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, well, we're still here. I can't see you anymore, but we're still streaming. Everything's good on my end. The people are saying everything's fine. So, yeah. So, if you just switch your camera on. But
yeah, I wonder why it turned off. I don't know. I didn't turn it off or anything. And oh, looks like there we go.
All right,
back. I'm back.
Cool. Well, yeah, we were talking about the characteristics of leaders, and it takes a whole bunch of essentially it just takes a whole huge skill set in order to become a billionaire or millionaire. And I was just saying at the end of that, it's like you ask any of these thought leaders or any of these billionaires or millionaires, and you say, how did you get your start? And none of them go, well, I won the lottery, and then that's what really got me started. It doesn't happen like that, right?
Yeah, definitely correct. In fact, it's actually the opposite. And I have a little bit of, if you can do what you did earlier, Steele, I can hear myself a little bit better. Thank you. It's actually the opposite. What I've learned from studying billionaires and successful people is that it really comes down to one word, and that word is iteration for successful entrepreneurs. So they just keep iterating on what they're doing. They get feedback from their customers or other types of data, and they figure out what isn't working, what is working, and they drop the isn't and they go with the is. And so that sounds really simple, but it's obviously really difficult to do, or we'd have every company being a $1 trillion company like Microsoft. And as you mentioned, the lottery people, it's actually not some. From what I've seen, it looks like most people who win the lottery end up losing it all. And it takes some people a few years, it takes maybe some people a decade, but they usually don't just lose all of the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars they made. They usually end up destroying their personal and social relationships as well too, because they don't know how to handle money and they don't know what to do with it. So they end up just giving it away to friends, family members, spending it on stupid, lavish things that seem great in the short term, but they're not thinking long term, right? So it all comes back to long term that we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, 100%. All right, so that's great. And you're an entrepreneur. You're one of these thought leaders. You're primed to blast off into the future and be. I mean, you're already a great person, but I mean, we're at point one of where your potential is, especially with how the world is shifting. You're getting set up for the new world. And tell us about your other interest, which is health, wealth, longevity, stem cell research, a whole bunch of really, really cool stuff. Tell us about where did you fall in love with health and wealth?
So from a very young age, I think I probably wasn't too different than other people, just kind of assuming that I was going to be young, like indefinitely. I'm talking about when you're real young, like 4 or 5 years old. And I never discuss these things with my parents or friends. I was just being a kid like most people. And then you become a teenager and you're like, okay, this is cool. I'm getting bigger. Looks like I'm turning into a man. And then by the time you're in your late teens, you're like, all right, I'm kind of like, this is probably what I'm going to look like for a while. Then you're in your early 20s and you're like, all right, things are going good. Like, this is at least for me. I'm sure everybody has a different experience. But then at that same point in time, around when I had the kind of minor health scare that I mentioned, around 20 years old, I started thinking, wait a minute, I see other people getting older and aging, like this is not just going to last forever. And I really started thinking about this a little bit deeper. So I started reading a lot of different books and tried to follow the right people. I read that book, The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. I got a lot of my books back here. That book's right there, along with 2 of his other books, Transcend.
Can you bring it out? Can you show us The Singularity?
Yeah. So let's see here.
This is an exclusive of the bookshelf.
Picking up the old laptop. So this is, let me move. Okay, so you got to do it the opposite here, the camera. Sorry, if anybody feels like they're on a boat, there's a little bit of lag here. Okay,
Love it.
So right here, this is The Singularity is Near,
Beautiful.
2005, Ray Kurzweil. This is his other book he co-wrote with Terry Grossman, who's an MD, called Transcend. And then this is his book, the last book he wrote. Geez, sorry, there's a lag on Skype, so I'm like holding it back and forth. How to Create a Mind is over there as well.
Great.
2012. So basically, I've just been following him for a number of years and other thought leaders, and most people get really upset about some of the things he says, like, that will never happen. But he is been called by Bill Gates as the #1 person for predicting future technologies. He's had a very good track record of doing this.
Very good.
Right. And so if you just listen to what he says, he's saying that, when he went to MIT when he was 17 years old, he went there because they were the only college that had a computer. And for maybe some of our younger viewers, let's repeat that. MIT, Massachusetts Institute Technology, was the only college that had a computer. It was larger than the size of this little office that I'm in right now. It was a massive computer. It cost about $10 million in, late 60s money, which is, like $1 billion nowadays. And they didn't just let anybody get near it. You had to have access to IT faculty to even get near the damn thing. But that's why he went there. And basically in those last 45 years or so since then, that computer has shrunk in about 1,000 times in actual, the quantity of the physical space. It's gotten about 1,000 times more powerful for about 1,000 times less the price. And those are all rough numbers. I'm actually being relatively conservative with them. So what you have is this little thing right here is in our pocket. And that sounds crazy, but here's where it gets really crazy. If you look at the models that we've used to predict how this was going to happen, because there's people who've been predicting this, right? There's Moore's Law. And Moore's Law is Gordon Moore. He's the co-founder of Intel. He's worth a few $1 billion, and he's lives a few miles from here. If you look at Moore's Law, that's probably going to end soon, but there's other laws that are going to take over in computing. Moore's Law was the sixth paradigm of computing. The shrinking of vacuum tubes was the fifth law. The next thing that's going to happen is the three-dimensional, right? So our proteins in our body are three-dimensional. So these things right here are going to, in about 40 years, maybe 35 years or so, according to Ray Kurzweil and his models, are going to be about the size of our blood cell or smaller. They're going to be about 1,000 times more powerful, and they're going to be about 1,000 times cheaper in bits per dollar. So if you think about what that actually means, it's going to be a little computer that's smaller than your blood cell. It's going to be way more powerful than your blood cells, like your white blood cells. And you're going to be able to probably just update them on your smartphone or whatever to update the software. So if people wonder how we're going to live so much longer, that's just one way. There's gene therapy and other things. I interviewed Liz Parrish a few months ago, and I'm actually flying to Las Vegas. Yeah, big thumbs up for Liz Parrish.
Well done.
I'm flying to Las Vegas tomorrow, and I'll be at Rad Fest all week. So I'll hopefully be coming out with a lot of good content on my channel, and maybe get into some. People are going to be very busy at this conference, but it's a longevity conference for people who don't know. And I'll hopefully be able to grab people and get quick little 5-minute interviews that I'll be putting on my channel with Liz Parrish, Aubrey de Grey, Bill Andrews, and other longevity thought leaders.
There will be a lot of my friends at Rad Fest. I'll make sure I'll try and send some people over to say hi from the U.S. Transhumanist-Party. It's a big supporter of Rad Fest. They're going to be doing the announcements. We've done all the work for the USTP campaign here on this channel, and they are incredibly good people. They're really fun. They're really energetic. They're just great people. I mean, and they're really there's someone I'd like you to meet. His name's Charlie Cam. He's actually one of if you haven't met him already, or if you don't know him, he's one of Ray Kurzweil's good friends, and this is a guy who would sympathize with you a lot on these notions. You mentioned I don't know how to frame this, but you mentioned that there's a bit of slowness in your expectations with computers. What do you mean? Can you expand on that point? Do you think that this is moving a little slow?
Well, what I was stating earlier was when I'm reading this as a 20-year-old, approximately in 2005, I got really excited about a lot of these ideas that I read in The Singularity is Near and some other type of similar readings and some other documentaries. I have some documentaries over here too that I got to show you real quick. Just give me a second.
Yeah. Good.
My wife has moved them, but basically I have some DVDs that Ray Kurzweil's come out with and some other ones on the singularity and things. I was just hoping as a 20-year-old that these things would have been happening quicker, but it doesn't discourage me. It just motivates me to be more of the change that I want to see in the world, get more involved and connecting with people. So I'm going to Rad Fest. I'm on this podcast with you. I'm doing my own YouTube channel because we're going to be the ones that are going to build this technology. And a big message that I share with people is that there are already so many things that you can be doing right now that either don't cost that much money or cost no money that you can do to dramatically improve your health. And so those are the things that I'm sharing now. The telomerase gene therapy and myostatin inhibitor gene therapy that Liz Parrish had on September 15th, 2015, that costs around $150,000, and the price is probably not coming down anytime soon. I will probably do those gene therapies on myself in the next few years if they do continue to show that they're safe in the human body and that they are reversing biological aging. However, I understand that that's not going to be available for quite a while for most people. So I try and focus on things like just getting better sleep, how to eat healthier, intermittent fasting, how to take control of your mental faculties, because we now know that your brain and what you think about and the people you spend time around has a dramatic effect on your epigenetics and your genes and your longevity.
Yeah, and you've hit on one of the main points of this show as well, is that we're trying well, accelerate is probably not the right word, because like what I wanted to say is I think there's apathy, because like every time you look through in hindsight, you were saying like MIT only had the only computer in the world, and it's accelerated so fast since then that now there's billions of mobile phones all around the world. What Ray Kurzweil says is and I agree with this, is there's kind of this accommodation, a customization, like people become accustomed to the amount of change. You know, when they wake up each day, as they move forward through time, they go, oh, well, there's not that much change. You know, I still have the same mobile. You know, there's the mobile 7 is coming out, and in a few months it'll be mobile 8. But actually, when you look back, there's actually a huge curve of technology, but it's only when you really look back through the different years that you really see that. So I kind of think of like that. Like I don't want to become apathetic to the amount of change, and like there is so much change going on in a way that you know, once you actually start digging down into it, you know, I hang out with the people of the Transhumanist Australia a lot. We have conferences and stuff, and it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up. It's just what I find is I haven't been looking in the right areas, and I haven't been looking at the right research papers, and I haven't been looking at the right news sources, and then I suddenly can't keep up. You know, so in that way, it's kind of exciting. You know, but if I go back to the normal news cycle, you know, because I'm a news junkie, you know, it is the same old stuff. It's another war somewhere, and it's another, especially politics, which is a huge sinkhole of just he said, she said, he said, she said, and I mean that's so boring. I mean that's just I can't deal with it. It's a mass destruction, but it's important nonetheless. But it's a mass destruction. But I think what you're doing here, talking about, you know, gene therapies, talking with Liz Parrish, talking with Aubrey de Grey, talking with Ray Kurzweil, encouraging people how to live better, longer, healthier. I mean, what happens is, because centrally what I'm worried about is I'm worried about creating ethical parameters for advancing AI. I'm about creating ethical parameters for gene therapy. I'm about making sure technology is a neutral tool, making sure that technology leans towards the ethical side, as opposed to, you know, this mad scientist paradigm where every year the IQ of like Ben Zion says, every year the IQ of being able to destroy the world drops an IQ point, right? So you know, I want to ensure that we can lean to that ethical side, and that's what to do that, you need to be healthy, you need to be quick, you need to be connecting with the right people and having the right discussions and the right conversations.
I completely agree, and I think an effective way to communicate this is that I think most people know that it's important to put healthy things in your body now, like food and water. I think most people who are paying attention understand that right now in 2019. But I think one thing that most people don't appreciate well enough that they really should is that it's just as important, if not more important, to be putting the right ideas into your brain every single day as well too. Because the type of people that you spend your time with and the type of things that you watch and read, basically what you spend your time doing has a dramatic effect on your brain and your body, your biochemistry, your epigenetic effects on your genes and your longevity, your outlook on life. So you need to be putting healthy information into your brain, the right news, you know, from a financial and from a health standpoint. So, you know, that's why I think following the right people is so important. Be careful who you follow.
Yeah, be careful who you follow, and be careful about what you read, and because reading, you know, it's just like food. It's just another source of food, and you know, humans are information addicted. So if you're consuming intake, you're going to get the wrong output. So thank you for participating in this notion, and coming to this channel and supporting me, and getting the word out there, and getting us on the correct trajectory, especially on this new channel. Let's talk about your interview with Liz Parrish. I mean, Liz Parrish is a true giant in this field. Well respected. She's someone who's coming on this show at some point. She's patient zero. You've met the woman. Tell us about this exciting person and how you felt and how it all went.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to state that Liz is an incredible person and that gene therapy is the future, in my opinion. The nanorobots that hopefully we will build, as I just kind of outlined a few minutes ago, that Ray Kurzweil and many others have discussed, is very exciting, and I think that's a crucial piece to the puzzle to live a longer, healthier life, to increase our health span and our lifespan as humans. But I think that gene therapy is going to be the major thing that's going to be able to push us past the natural, maybe 125-year limit that humans seem to have. It's the only way we're going to be able to do it. We got to edit our genes. So this sounds really scary to many people. However, you need to understand how this is done. This is done through a virus vector. So this is what Liz Parrish did as patient zero, which I'll get to in a moment. But before you get too scared about that, understand that viruses have most likely driven the evolution of our species and every other species on this planet. And you accumulate certain viruses many times throughout your life. So it's a total natural process in that sense. And it's nothing to be afraid of if the technology is administered properly. And that's a big if right now, because there's only a certain amount of people who are qualified to do a therapy like this. So this is kind of what Liz has discussed and what she talks about in the interview with me. And she had to go to Bogota, Colombia in September of 2015 to actually have these gene therapies injected into her. And she found 8 doctors who were actually willing to do this, because what she did is illegal in the United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, or maybe the land of the fee, home of the slave, depending on how you think of it. And it's illegal in pretty much every single first world country as well, too. So that's why she went to Bogota, Colombia to do this. And she's a trendsetter. There's no other way to say it. She took massive risk on her body, and it's been just over 4 years now. As we sit here, it's been about 4 years and 2 weeks. And from everything that I've seen, I'm sure she'll be given an update at Rad Fest in a few days. She looks younger, in my opinion. I was friends with her on Facebook before she did this in 2015. I've been following her for a number of years. And I personally think that she looks younger now at age 49 than she did at age 45 when she had this therapy. And all of her biomarker test results show that as well. Her telomere length has dramatically reversed. Her blood work, just her muscle mass, her insulin, everything has reversed dramatically. So right now it's frustrating for me to see the study that's going around about these 9 people who have reversed their aging by about 2.5 years, their biological aging. If you're in the longevity movement and you follow a lot of this news right now, it's been going around the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I only got a little bit of hair left, and it makes me want to like pull out the last of it, because this is not that big of a deal. 2.5 years is great for them on what they did, but Liz Parrish and what she did should be getting mainstream news on every single outlet everywhere if we were living in a sane society, and we're clearly not. So I'm just trying to do the best that I can by promoting what she's done, and hopefully more and more of the world will eventually figure this out.
Yeah, and I asked Zoltan Itzvan about if you know who Zoltan Itzvan is, right? So I asked Zoltan Itzvan about this idea about why is genetics, because it's so unfortunate with World War II and the Aryan race theory and all that stuff, you know, that people have been scared out of their wits about talking about genetics. They've been scared out of their wits about talking about genomes and anything to do with genetic theory because, you know, there's this dystopic notion, and I mean, you know, there's this sort of racial element that goes on there, and I think that there's still a hangover. I don't think it's going to last forever. I think people like you and me, I think people like Liz Parrish, I think people like Zoltan Itzvan and the transhumanist-party, and I think these people, we will overwhelm these ideas, but I think there's still definitely a hangover from the World War that's carried on psychologically. I think that generation who remembers that and actually cares about that, I think that they're slowly, that voice will disappear over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. I think you're at the end of that cycle now, and there will be a revision. But I think the hangover of that experience is still playing. It's why she's not in the mainstream news. That's why she's not, you know, there. It's why, you know, this Gattaca sort of movie dystopia is still there, and then it's a bit creepy and it's a bit, you know, but it's coming too fast. CRISPR, gene editing, you know, the Liz Parrish, the demand side of fixing your genomes, your genes to cure diseases, Alzheimer, and a whole bunch of other things. There's too much demand there. There's too much of the table is flipping, and I think we're living in the dying throes of the anti-gene, or passively, you know, the non-discussion about it. I think this is it. I think it's dying. I think it's 5 years until it's completely dead. And then we flip into a new world where people will actually talk about it, and that's what I want. I want a discussion. I don't want people to not acknowledge that exists. And there's plenty of great YouTube channels now that go out to smaller, younger people, which it's just the science on genes. And I mean, I'm talking about those ones with infographics and music, and people use it to research for their science experiments at school and all that. And I think that is and these things have multi-million or billions of views, and I think those are waking people up to a non-dystopic, non-association with World War II, a non-association with doctors that have tried things in the past, and monkey experiments. And I think we're moving away from that, and we're going towards a better, cleaner, healthier discussion that has to frankly be had, or else, you know, we end up in a world where this technology advances without discussion, and that, my friend, is a bad world. That's a world of idiocracy. If anybody's ever seen that movie, it's one of my favorites, right? And I saw that when it came out in 2005. And I laughed, and I thought, you know, it makes sense, kind of like the movie WALL-E. It's been 14 years since that movie came out. That movie was satire, and it's moving slowly as every year ticks on to be less and less satire and more reality. So, you know, you mentioned a number of points there. One thing I want to distinguish is that, well, first of all, I should give some background. I'm half Jewish. I'm not a religious person, but my mother side of the family is Jewish. And so World War II has been a massive interest of mine that I've studied, you know, dramatically over many years. And some of that is just, you know, binge watching on the History Channel World War II documentaries, you know. But it's important for people to understand that what Hitler and the Nazi Party was talking about is called eugenics, and that is proven pseudoscience. So pseudoscience, in case people don't understand, is false. It's not true. It's fake news. And so that should be completely distinguished from gene therapy and all the things that we're discussing, which is fact, real science. And then we're pushing science forward. So things that are theorized and are science fiction right now, we can move that into science fact. So that's a very important thing that I want to distinguish here. And we want to get people excited about these things. They're super exciting. We don't have to get chronic diseases when we get older. And even one of my really good friends, his wife just found out that it appears, I'm not religious, but again, we're crossed our fingers. It appears as of about 5 days ago that she has just
gotten rid of stage 3 rare ovarian cancer. And she's done it with an incredible network of people, listening to all sorts of different people, going to a naturopath, getting the surgery to get it out, but she's having an open mind, and she's tackling this head on with all the technologies and, social networks that we have today to her benefit. So I'm just an optimist. When I really think about who I am and why I believe this stuff from a very young age, I'm just an optimist. I believe in humanity. I'm on Team Human. And I want to fight for people, and I want people to understand that we're not living in 1992 anymore. There is an array of incredible technologies that have already changed the world. And if you think that what we've seen right now is crazy, then if you're under the age of 50 or 60, strap on your seatbelts, because I think the future is going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. And we've got David Shoemaker in the comments, and David Shoemaker is a really good gentleman. He's an aeronautical engineer. He works with planes anyway, and he's a longevity advocate. And I think you probably will see him at Rad Fest. So I'll try and hook you two up, because you'll have a great conversation. Lots of my friends will be there. So I'll try and Mr. Shoemaker, you should share this link around to try and get some more people in the chat as well. But I'll try and hook you two up, because he's a fantastic guy to talk to. Let's talk about Aubrey de Grey. It's another giant that you met. Tell me, if I think of Aubrey, I think of telomeres, right? Let's talk about SENS Research Foundation and Aubrey de Grey. How was that?
If it's okay, Steele, first of all, I'd love to meet you, David, and Steele, please email me other contacts that you have that are going to Rad Fest, because I want to connect with as many people as possible. I'm going to Rad Fest primarily to network with people. You can watch a lot of this content on YouTube. And also before
you'll probably end up on the Futurist New Deal podcast, because I know Ben Zion's in the chat as well, and he's gonna be like, come on the Futurist New Deal podcast. So get ready for that.
Hit me up. So yeah, before we move on to Aubrey, I didn't say quite hardly anything about Liz Parrish. So just real briefly.
Oh yeah, go. Yep.
In my YouTube videos with longevity experts I've done this year on my YouTube channel, I've been kind of gradually telling the story. So I did the stem cells in December of last year, interviewed the doctor and the founder of the company that I had the 300 million mesenchymal stem cells derived from umbilical cord of a healthy birth. And then I interviewed Dr. Ed Park in March in Orange County, where he's running his anti-age practice. I've been friends with him for a number of years. Highly recommend his 2 books. And he's also friends with Dr. Bill Andrews, who I interviewed in late May at his company, Sierra Sciences in Reno, Nevada. And I'm going to be hopefully interviewing him in a few days at Rad Fest and interviewing him some more at his office. So the story with Liz Parrish that a lot of people might not realize is that she met Aubrey at his longevity conference in the UK back in, I think it was 2013. And Aubrey's then wife back then, she really was coached up by Aubrey and by Dr. Bill Andrews as well. And then Bill Andrews is the one that actually created the gene therapy, the telomerase and myostatin inhibitor gene therapy that Liz Parrish took. Bill Andrews and his team at Sierra Sciences in Reno, Nevada created this gene therapy in their lab, but a very small amount of it. And we talk about that a little bit in my interview with Bill Andrews on my channel. And then she had to take that viral vector and scale it up dramatically. And scale up just means that she had to create a lot more of it. Like, I want to say like 1,000 times more of it, because he gave her just a little bit of it. So obviously you have to have very specialized scientists who are very competent and know what they're doing. And Liz had to do her research and trust that these people know what they're doing before she got these, injected into her. So I kind of tell that story in my interview process. And then I interviewed Liz on July 10th. And then a week later, I interviewed Aubrey de Grey. So, apologize there. I can talk about Aubrey now, but I want to give you a moment to share any feedback there.
No, that's really cool. And Dr. Bill from Sierra Sciences is good friends with the leader of the transhumanist-party. or Gennady Gennady, Chairman Gennady. I can never say his name on air. I can say it off air, and then I get on air and I stutter and stammer, and I might as well not try. But yeah, it's a Russian name. It's a good name. But anyway, yeah. He's a very interesting guy. He goes running all the time. And yeah, I wish I was in America, to be honest. Like sometimes because there's so much going on in America, there's a bit of a brain drain from here to there. Because I hook up with people here and they say, "Oh, I'm off to America to do all this stuff," and damn. But no, yeah, that's really cool. So because I wanted to ask you about the cell injection as well. I was working my way up to that, but if that comes first, that's good. So what do they? What did what are you trying to do with the cell injection?
Well, we can table that, or I can talk about that now. It's really up to you. I can discuss ovary or stem cells.
What's the correct order?
There really isn't. So why don't we stick with ovary, since I've kind of been telling the story of the gene therapy and some of the interviews that I've done this year. So I interviewed Aubrey on July 17th at SINS Research Foundation, which is in Mountain View, California, right there in the heart of Silicon Valley. And he's a phenomenal person. I've been following his work for about 15 years as well, when I started getting into this longevity movement. And I read his book, Ending Aging, back in 2007. It's phenomenal. I think it still stands true today. And in my interview, I asked him, "Hey, why haven't you written another book? It's been 12 years. And he had a great answer. He said, "Well, I think that most of the things that I've said in my book have shown to be true. At least they haven't been disproven. And we've been working on a lot of those theories. And I think that in the year 2019, it makes the most sense to be doing interviews and podcasts, because that's how a lot of people are consuming content." And so he said, "That's why I agreed to do this interview with you." And I thought that's a great answer. And that's why, Steele, I want to applaud you for what you're doing. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. We need to share ideas with people. And you can listen to what we're talking about right now as you're chopping up food, making dinner, or multitasking, doing lawn work in the backyard. I mean, that's what I do. I'm plugged in, learning nonstop, even while I'm doing things around the house. So that's how I'm able to continue to learn and iterate and figure out what's really going on and who I really should be listening to and following, and not getting, fooled again, like a lot of people seem to be these days.
Yeah, lots of people, like, I look at the stats, and lots of people put us on their TV, and just play it on the TV. Well, I don't know, that's what the stat says. So I'm happy with that. If you want to put me on TV, that's fantastic. It uploads to high quality HD, and so that's good. So yeah, no, that's fantastic. So yeah, let's go back and talk about your injection of stem cells, right? What was the motivation, and what are you trying to achieve?
So I guess it all comes back to me being 20 years old again. It's really funny that I didn't make those two connections, but when I was 20 years old, this was probably about a year earlier from when I had the really bad stomach problems. I was a sophomore in college, and I played a lot of sports for my fraternity, and I was on the basketball team. And just during a practice, I came down from a rebound on a guy's foot. And so anybody who plays basketball knows that the worst way to sprain your ankle is landing on somebody's foot. And so my right ankle just completely went sideways, and everybody heard it pop. It was a 3rd-degree ankle sprain. So for those people who don't know ankle sprains, played basketball since I was like 4 or 5, grew up in Kentucky. We kind of worship basketball. It's like a religion. 1st-degree and second-degree ankle sprains are painful, and I had many of them in both ankles up to that point at 20 years of age. But you just kind of get over them. They heal up. You don't even really need proper physical therapy. At least I didn't when I was that age. So this 3rd-degree one, black and blue, up halfway my shin, all the way down to my toes, black and blue, incredible pain. I was on crutches. I couldn't walk for about a month. And I didn't get proper physical therapy. I just thought, I'm 20 years old. I'm Superman. I just seem to heal up. I'm young. And, that kind of worked, and it kind of didn't, because as I got older and I'm sitting in a desk throughout my 20s, slaving away, working my ass off, getting ahead in the corporate world, I realized that the ankle never fully healed. And it, over the next 15 years, had effects on my right knee and my lower back as well, according to various healthcare practitioners I've been to. And one of my really good friends, Dr. Brandon Thomas, who's a chiropractor, I've shown some of his treatments on my YouTube channel as well. So basically, this is chronic pain that I've been dealing with, and it hadn't gotten better. And so I knew a lot about stem cells. I'm constantly researching different biotechnologies, and I've been connected with many of them on LinkedIn, follow them on YouTube and whatnot. So I said, you know what? I got the money. Like, what is the problem here? Let's do the research, Brent, and let's find the right clinic to go to for me. And so I did that, and there's many good clinics out there, but for me, Dream Body Clinic in Nuevo Vallarta, Mexico, which is a 20-minute drive from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, which is a major city with a large state-of-the-art airport, was the right clinic for me. And they are getting real umbilical cord-derived mesenchymal or mesenchymal stem cells. They're also called medicinal signaling cells, is what I believe we should call them because of what they actually do. They were named mesenchymal stem cells by a guy named Arnold Kaplan in the late 1980s because of what he thought they did. Now, 30 years later, because of what we know they actually do, they send out cytokines, trophic factors, things like exosomes to communicate with your immune system and your body to basically help your body heal. This is how our bodies heal. They should really be called medicinal signaling cells. So that's what Arnold Kaplan wants to call them now. And so I had about 300 million of these injected into me. I had about 200 million of them IV into my arm. Those go directly to my lungs, and like 90% of them approximately. And then the rest of those should go to my heart and then to other organs and places in the body from the signals they send out communicating with your body. They figure out where they need to go based off problems you may be having. And then I had about 22 million injected into my ankle, 32 million injected into my right knee, and 32 million injected into my right shoulder because I've played baseball my whole life and I've been playing dodgeball competitively for about the last 10 years. So it's a little crazy, but I love playing dodgeball, and I'm playing pretty good right now. I just played a couple nights ago, and I'm crushing these 25-year-olds. So it's feeling pretty good. But the local injections that I had also had 0.1 milliliters of calcium glutamate and my own PRP, which stands for platelet-rich plasma, which is something that, you know, medical science has known about for at least 15, 20 years, and it's been regular for 10 years or so, going to the right type of healthcare practitioner. But PRP is great, but it's nothing compared to stem cells and exosomes and things like that. So, I mean, just due to the interest of time, I'll say that it has had a dramatic impact on my health. I've healed up dramatically. I've been doing other things as well too this year, like the chiropractic treatment. I've been getting better sleep, doing intermittent fasting, which we know releases your own natural stem cells, gets your body to kill off some of the old and damaged stem cells and create new healthy stem cells. So I've done a lot of that this year. I've ramped it up even more. I've been doing intermittent fasting for years, but now I have about a 4 to 6 hour window that I eat most days within. So what that means is about every single day I'm going 18 to 20 hours with zero food, and I try to go about 12 of those hours with no water. So I'm trying to ramp up the autophagy that my body has, which gets my body to kill off old and damaged stem cells and white blood cells.
All right, that's incredible. Yeah, I'm no health expert or medical expert, but sounds great from here. I want to investigate this more, and I'll have to dive down deep and watch your channel a little bit more to understand what exactly is going on there. But that sounds incredible. And does it have an impact? I mean, are you healing up quicker? I mean, are you becoming stronger?
I'd say I definitely am. And Steele, if you go to my YouTube channel and you click on the playlist there on the homepage, I've created a stem cell playlist. So in that playlist, I have short little 2-minute videos of every single injection that I received there. the interview with the doctor that injected me, showing me my blood work that they did, the lab work, and showing me that they certified these are real stem cells that came from a healthy birth from about 2 days earlier of a person who was tested to have no viruses in their Guadalajara partnership at a company called CryoVita, which is a 5-hour drive. So they ship them overnight and they're not frozen, which is huge because you can't do this in America. It's against the law in America due to FDA regulations. And most countries are not allowing this either. So it's unfortunate that this has to be so complex and annoying. You have to do so much research to find the right clinic in 2019. But that's why I did all this research, and other people are now figuring this out. And so in my stem cell playlist, I've documented all those treatments, and then I've given some update videos on my progress. And yes, I mean, I'm doing dramatically better. It's been a little over 9 months now. It's been about 9.5 months. And, you know, I don't want to speak too much and then go backwards, but I'm living really healthy and I'm feeling great. And my shoulder, knee, and ankle and lower back are feeling about how they did when I was in my early 20s. So I'm very happy.
All right, well that sounds really good, and you know, but there's a lot of, I mean, America there's a lot of hard Christian. I don't want to necessarily blame hard Christian right conservatives in America, but you know, I don't know who else to talk about when I talk about this. But do you find that those guys are the main objective, like they're putting up roadblocks and barriers in federal courts and in yeah, in their political parties, etc., to enabling this sort of stem cell research / treatment to proliferate across the country?
Yeah, it's really hard to state what the true problem is. And like many things in life, I think it's complex. You know, we humans like to get to the root of the cause of the problem, and we like to make things black and white. And I think that this is just a complex issue. So I definitely think that the extreme right and the more fundamentalist type religious people are playing a role here as holding this science and research back. I think there's clear evidence of that, and that's definitely frustrating. That's kind of the idiocracy that we talked about before. But there's other aspects too. There's the power structure of the pharmaceutical industry that can't be ignored. I mean, if you really understand what stem cell treatments are and exosomes and gene therapy, I mean, we're talking about the most disruptive technologies that the world has ever seen. And there's a massive amount of people in the financial world that I'm sure you and your audience know because you report on it, that very much enjoy the status quo, and they're heavily invested in the status quo of the multi-trillion-dollar pharmaceutical global industry. So what happens when you realize that stem cells, exosomes, many other type of therapies, and gene therapy could just completely make all of these other drugs that they've spent decades of years on research and billions, if not tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars on research obsolete? I mean, that's they're not just going to let that happen. So, you know, we could talk for hours about this, but at the high level, that's what's going on from my perspective. And it's pretty clear, you know, if you do the research and you talk to the right people. Scientists can't come out and say that, you know, because they're heavily invested in the system. They're getting grant money, so they have to be very careful with what they say. You know, it's a crazy world out there once you start really connecting the dots and understanding how it works. But that's where the beauty for people like me and you, Steele, this is where we come in. We're not in that system. We're just on YouTube. We can tell the truth, and there's nobody. Google can shut me down. YouTube can censor us, but guess what? I'll just go a different route.
Yeah, and that is the truth, and you know, I advocate for a whole bunch of disruptive technologies, and you know, it's hard because you know there is such a machine, and you know, arrayed against us that does promote you know, the old world order style mechanisms, and it's just frustrating because you know, they hurt themselves as well in the long run. But the other bad thing is, like, the scary thing is like when you discover that there's like billionaires who go to these gene clinics in other countries that do this sort of stuff, and yet they tell people it's bad and stuff like this, and you know, that's really annoying. So, well, you know, thank you for enlightening us on that. I'll have to do some more research on that. I think there are political ways in order to promote these sorts of technologies and these sorts of innovations, but it's kind of like as controversial as the abortion debate. With these new it feels like the abortion debate is going to start fading out of history now. I think we've come with these new ways of birthing people outside of the womb. I forgot the word now, but with this new technology coming down the pipeline, the abortion debate's going to fade out. But I think this is probably going to be the new divisive debate, where you have people on one side of the street saying, stem cells are great, and other people on the other side saying, it's the work of the devil or something. I don't know, but I feel like this is the new abortion debate. Do you feel like that it's going to be as controversial as the abortion debate, or do you think what do you think?
Well, there's some aspects here that are controversial, but what I did, in my opinion, and I'd say for any reasonable person, once they understand what I did, is not controversial at all. So to be clear, what I had injected to me was specifically the Wharton's jelly, which is a specific part inside the umbilical cord of a healthy human birth. And so most people on planet Earth today, when they have a baby, they have some birth products as well, the umbilical cord, the placenta, and most people are just throwing those away as trash. They can be donated to a clinic, and that's what happened with me. This was donated, and I had those remnants from the Wharton's jelly injected in me. And so to me, that's not controversial at all. Now, there is a clinic in Kiev, Ukraine called EMCELL. It stands EMCELL, that stands for embryonic, but it only stands for embryonic because the country of Kiev and the language, the country of Ukraine and the Ukrainian language does not have the word fetal. They only have the word embryonic, and the word embryonic they interchange with the word fetal. So they're actually injecting fetal stem cells from aborted babies, about 7 to 12 weeks aborted babies. And that sounds controversial to some people, and it is, but there's an important detail here, which is that the abortions are already done. So abortions are happening. There's about 50 million abortions per year. That's a lot. Think about how many that is a day. And so all this clinic is doing is they're taking those abortions that have already happened, and instead of them being trash and going to waste, they're taking those incredible fetal stem cells and they're saving people's lives in some cases, and definitely improving people's lives by injecting them into them, people who are in chronic pain or have chronic diseases. So personally, I don't see anything controversial there. And I don't believe we're going to be living in a world where people are going to purposely be getting pregnant to purposely get aborted to then make money to inject people. Maybe that will happen in the future. I'm not going to try and predict that, but that's certainly not happening right now from my research.
Yeah, that was going to be my point of inquiry. But if you don't believe that will happen, that won't generate a demand side, which will be accessed by people with issues of poverty, well then that's fine, I guess. But then some people will say, but one is enough. Do you know what I mean? If just one person does that, then that's enough, and that's why I think this could blow up as the next big debate as abortion slowly fades out of history. But it'll be something interesting, and it depends which side you take and which side you stand on, and and this, and the other thing is, like, it goes back to what I was saying at the start. We've got to have these discussions. We've got to start talking about this stuff now, or it's going to hit the society like a train. And it's not the only train coming down. It's our train, but it's not the But if they don't prepare themselves, well then get ready, society. You'll get hit, and you should have been watching Detonation. I mean you should have been watching Brent Nally. I mean, you should have had your eyes wide open and not been asleep at the wheel, society. So, this is just going back to what we were saying with ingesting the right information and the right food and the right thought. If you're not watching Brent Nally, if you're not watching Detonation, well then you're asleep at the wheel. So so it's going to be an interesting future, and it's going to be I'm excited. I'm personally excited to see what happens on this, and we want people to have healthy, longer lifespans. And so I guess my final question and point of inquiry, another controversial topic, is aging a disease? Do you consider aging as a disease? Would you like that to be classified as a disease in order to initiate the mechanisms that classification would open up?
Well, Steele, it's a great question, and it's an important question right now. And before I answer that question, I want to give a little bit of background. So when I interviewed Aubrey de Grey in July of this year, 2019, I was rather surprised that he does not think it's important for aging to be classified as a disease. And I and many other leaders like Liz Parrish and Bill Andrews, I don't want to speak for them. They might have changed, but when I interviewed them, and I interviewed Liz on July 10th and Bill on May 30th, and I communicate with them on social media and privately every now and then, I think they still want aging to be called a disease. And right now I do too. And so I'd like to explain why I think it's important. So in the US, according to the FDA, only a drug can cure, prevent, or treat a disease. And so a lot of people don't know this, but if you look at a lot of products that are not approved by the FDA, it will say in America, these products have not been approved by the FDA. They're not meant to treat, cure, prevent a disease. And I know a little bit about this because after my mortgage job, I wanted to just get to California and get to Silicon Valley, and I was interested in health. So I took a job at a nutraceutical company for about a year and a half in 2008 and 9. And so we were selling things that were not approved by the FDA. And so the FDA was not approving us, but they do regulate companies like that, nutraceuticals. So they could control what we could call, you can say this, you can't say that, you can treat this, you can't treat that. So with that being understood, if the classification of aging is put into the disease classification, then all of a sudden you will start seeing funding pour into understanding aging at a massive level from government funding and grants. So that is very important because the only reason, in my opinion, why we haven't learned better ways to slow, stop, and reverse human aging is just because we haven't put enough funding into it. We put a measly amount of funding into this right now. SENS, for example, is still getting only about $6 million a year. This is the largest problem on the planet. And let me define that real quick. Every single day, about 150,000 humans die. Of those 150,000 humans, about 110,000 of them are dying from age-related diseases. And they're not just dying like getting hit by a bus. That would be too great. They're normally dying a slow death that happened over many years, if not decades, of their body withering away, their mental faculties withering away, their relationships with their friends and family withering away. More and more money spent on healthcare. Healthcare costs are rising everywhere, right? It's because we're living longer, but we're living longer in chronic conditions because we haven't solved this aging problem. And we don't even, I don't even want us to, I don't even expect us to solve it within 5, 10, 20 years. I just want us to be improving on it, right? Let's put in some research and let's slow these diseases and the aging process. And really, as I've been stating before, these are things that I'm talking about on my channel. And if you start implementing some of these things, like I teach how to get better sleep. I teach people how to intermittent fast properly. I teach people how to eat a diet that's proper for them based off the company Viome, so they can eat proper for their microbiome. I teach people about stem cells. There's all sorts of things that you can be doing right now to dramatically improve your health and slow down and reverse the aging process.
Well, that's really fantastic, and the lack of money for SENS Research Foundation is appalling, And it's funny because I talk to policy wonks all the time about this, and government's always complaining about the amount of money they have to pay for pensions, and they have to pay for end of life care and palliative care, and degenerative diseases, and they're going on and on and on about it. But prevention is a pound of cure, right? I mean, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Benjamin Franklin, like Ben Zion says on this show, and I think that's true. I think there's a not a focus on preventing curable diseases and curable conditions that end up putting a strain on your state's coffers in terms of end of life care and all these hospitals for all these people. It's madness. I find it's madness. And when you go deeper, you learn certain things about national security and stuff. Then you start to understand a little bit more why this stuff goes on. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting that there's a huge military budget, which is, in some ways, it's confusing. In some ways, the military budget is there to protect life, right? I mean, you invest in machine guns and nuclear missiles and all sorts of weapons in order to protect your life. But when it comes to the human body and, implanting devices inside us and actually fixing some of these illnesses, there doesn't seem to be a great emphasis on that. And isn't that what the military is all about? It's all about, like, when you join up the military, it's preserving life. And then suddenly it's like, but hang on, we've got to focus on building military equipment and outsmarting the enemy in order to preserve life. But don't worry about this other aspect where aging is killing most of the people. Wouldn't that be preserving life? Can't you just take 1.1 of your percent of your budget, especially there in the United States, and focus on that killer rather than, terrorism kills almost next to nobody. Comparatively, every death is a tragedy. I'm not saying that that's good. I'm not saying that 9/11 is good. I'm not saying any of that. But comparatively, it's almost next to nothing. And wouldn't a proper military strategy be about preserving life? Isn't that a confusing Are you as confused as I am?
It's the simplest thing ever to understand. Every single day we have about 30 World Trade Centers. It's that simple. 110,000 people die every single year from age-related diseases. And as I said before, they're not just like dying a quick death, like getting blown up in a plane. I don't know what happened to those people in the plane on the day of 9/11, but
it's not like they're just, I know.
Right. It's not like they're just dying a quick death. Like, the aging is no fun, when you start getting up in those older ages. My wife's grandmother right now is 95 years old. Her life is not very fun. Your reward for living the right way and so long is a slow and painful death as your mental faculties slowly fade away, And I've seen all 3 of my 4 grandparents go through this slippery slope before they passed. I've lost all my grandparents. So what we want to do is invest in, research and technologies that can slow, stop, and reverse aging. And this is the same thing to do when you understand the data. And real quick, my final point on this deal is that, if you're frustrated with this and if it's maddening when you look into it and you see clearly and you understand this, just realize that there's other people out there who understand this as well and who've gone through that stage of frustration. And I still get frustrated when I see things, read things in the news, because we're not allocating resources properly. But all we can do is focus on the data and the facts and keep telling our leaders, how they should be, changing based off reality.
And you mentioned something before about your own personal history, which really got me thinking, because I thought about along the same lines, and I'm wondering what sort of a mass impact it has on mass psychology. But you were saying, when you're really young, when you're between the age of say 1 and 10, I mean, life seems like it's going to go on forever as a healthy extension. But then as you get older, you start to consider these questions. Do you think it's because we're living healthier, younger lives, on average, that people aren't thinking about this until they hit 40 now, But I mean, yes, we're living longer, but they're also not thinking about these policies until, oh, one day they wake up and they go, oh, damn, I'm 40 now. I'm still relatively healthy. I'm in the prime of my life, or whatever. But now, only now they're waking up to it, and by then they've got a couple of kids, and they're maybe one or two kids, and they've got a career that they got to focus on, and they got 10 more years until that big holiday thing, and kids are in school. I mean, it's busy life, and then then they get to 50, 60, and then they're like, wow, it's too late for me to actually do anything except for invest money into this, but I actually have to focus on my own retirement. There's like a trap there, right? So it's my argument is that young people need to be educated on this really early, and need to think about this really early, and need to start working on solutions really early in order to not have a lag gap, in order to have them considering the future as opposed to considering the future when it's too late. You can't, if you're too late on the horse, then you do end up in this problem that we have in the world, where you invest resources in hospitals rather than prevention, right?
I completely agree with everything you stated. And when you're talking about the kids and educating them when they're young, not only is it educating them about what they can be doing for society, what problems they can be working on, what they should be studying, what they should be thinking about from an entrepreneurial standpoint for creating technologies to help us slow, stop, and reverse aging. But they should also be thinking about what type of lifestyle they should be living from a young age, building those right habits so that they personally don't have these problems. And the reason why this isn't really happening is because they're not being taught this. And so, one thing that Jacques Fresco made very clear to me, I watched every single YouTube video I could find of Jacques Fresco by the year 2010. Every single one. I was obsessed for a couple of years because he was so brilliant. I got so much wiser and smarter from listening to this man. He was a true polymath, and it's no accident that he lived to 100 years of age, just because he was that intelligent and he kept his brain and body going. And one thing that he said is that our brains have associative memory. That's how our brains work. A lot of people don't realize this. A lot of people think that like inventors just come up with things out of their head. That's not how it happens at all. Creativity is taking known elements and arranging them in unique ways. But the key there is that you have to first see something. You have to hear something. The idea has to come from somewhere. It doesn't just come into your brain. It has to come from somewhere. They're now learning this with artificial intelligence and machine learning. They're now realizing that, okay, we've built these intelligent robots, but they're basically like little kids. They're like little 2-year-olds. So now they're putting them out into the environment and they start learning, the machine learning, and then they get better. And then they're a 3-year-old, they're a 4-year-old. And then exponentially, all of a sudden, they're like beating the best player in Go on the planet, with the AlphaGo a couple years ago. So it happens exponentially, though, within that scenario. But my point, to bring it home to what I'm talking about, is we need to start educating our kids with real information, not pumping their head full of crap about religion and nonsense pseudoscience. If we're going to pump them full of crap, then we can't expect them to grow up sane. They're going to grow up, as complete idiots being taught nonsense by their parents. So we need them being taught the proper things from a young age about what aging really is, how we can actually stop, slow, and reverse it in that sense. And they need to be taught the proper things about money as well, too. I'll just end this little rant that I'm on with the fact that my wife is 8.5 months pregnant with our first child. And I'm going to be raising my child a lot differently than most people. And it will be really interesting to see as my child progresses, as we play out this experiment with my kid, what kind of a human I can produce. Because, I learned from Warren Buffett at a very young age that Warren grew up he read every single financial book in the Omaha Public Library by the time he was 13 years old. That's why he's worth $70 billion or whatever he's worth now at age 89. It wasn't some accident. It's not like he got lucky. He understood money because his dad was a congressman and taught him about finance and how important it was. He took it as a priority. He got hooked on it. Now, that's not everybody's path. It doesn't need to be everybody's path. I'm not saying everybody should be Warren Buffett or will be Warren Buffett. But the point is that if you teach kids things that matter, like money and your health, from a very young age, then you can at least be getting them started, getting them rolling, having that snowball effect so that they can actually do productive things by the time they become adults. Whereas I feel like we've kind of reverted in our society in the first world now, where we're teaching kids nonsense, letting them do whatever, screw around their phones, playing video games, whatever. There's nothing wrong with video games in moderation, but they're just growing up, so many of them, without getting the proper information. Before we know it, they're young adults, and then we throw them into the workforce, and they're like, what the hell just happened? You know, like I don't have any skills. I don't know, I wasn't properly prepared for this world. And so, yeah, a lot of them are angry now, and they should be angry.
Well, yeah, and it comes down to teaching kids how to think, not what to think. Critical thinking is at the core of the world. If you know, skill sets and training are obviously really important, but you know they're not everything, especially in a world with changing topography of job topography. If you can navigate it using critical thinking, you're in a much better situation, looking after your health and wealth, and also looking and ensuring that you can build friendships and relationships that last, you know. And I love this notion that you set out on, that you're in for the long haul, and thank you very much. You've been a fantastic guest. I'll throw all 5 of my subscribers to your channel. Nah, but look, anyone who's here, they got to go there. You got to go there. I'm actually going to go there and binge watch your stem cell thing right now, as soon as I have the time. Time poor, really time poor, but I'm going to go binge watch the stem cell thing, because that's absolutely fascinating. I think that's going to be a new dimension of, you know, polarizing debate, and I want to be on the right side. Now I'm going to say which side I'm going to be on. I think I know which side I'm going to be on, but it's going to be a polarizing debate, and there's some ethical issues there. But let's do it correctly, and you know, and I want to work out the companies that are at the core of this. And I know I've heard of that Ukrainian one before. I had a lady on here; she was talking about that one before. So these names are popping up over and over again. So that's really cool. And you've been a fascinating guest, fantastic. I love everything. I love everything you're talking about, and it's just been so much fun. And congratulations! I hope you all the best with your new child. You know, parenting is probably going to be the hardest life lesson. I don't know, but it sounds tough. It sounds rigorous, and it sounds like you're going to learn a lot about yourself and your wife along the way. So good luck with that, and we'll see you soon on Detonation. We'll see you back here on Detonation for sure. Oh, you gone again, have you? But anyway, look, we're still streaming, so we'll see you again here on Detonation.
I didn't do that.
We'll see you here on Detonation. Just say goodbye. We'll see you here again on Detonation. Thank you very much, Brent Nally. You've been a fantastic host. You've been a fantastic guest. And, you know, we've had this Skype issue, but that's all right. That's okay. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming to join me. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, David. Thanks a whole bunch of other people who are in the chat talking. We'll get back to you. Hit the bell notification. Make sure you subscribe to the new channel. Liz Parrish, Albert de Grey, Natasha Vidamore. We're going to have them all on here, and we're going to move all those old videos over very soon. So that's going to be really exciting. So make sure you hit that bell, and we'll be all good. All right, thanks, everybody. All welcoming to you all this way, all this week. Detonation.